Welcome back to the All Kinds of Weather forecast. Neil Shulman, along with Adrian Perez here, are going to talk about the Gators and Bulls, the fourth meeting between these two in-state foes. Can't really call them rivals in good faith, but Florida does lead the series 3-0 all time. They'll try to keep that as a perfect record against the Bulls and make that 4-0 when they meet this Saturday in what could be and what should be the first ranked matchup between the two teams. We are waiting for the AP poll to drop. We're recording this very early on Tuesday morning, but Adrian, we're ready to talk about another game for the Florida Gators, one that actually is going to come with some peril. I think if Florida's not ready to go, I think even if Long Island was not given Florida's best effort, Florida was going to handle that game pretty easily. So this is the first game of the year where I think if Florida messes around and doesn't play their A game, they do have the potential to get beat. So we got a lot to talk about today, but let's start by talking about our sponsor. 401k Generation is our proud sponsor. The wealth management company that helps you invest today for your future tomorrow. Their team of advisors is committed to providing guidance and education for your 401k plan and its participants, and they also offer a range of enrollment solutions that are tailored to meet the unique needs of your company's 401k plan. Whether it is savings for a child's college, investment advice, or even just your retirement, 401k Generation's team of advisors makes getting to know you their top priority. Their advisors will tailor a path to assist you in navigating life's financial milestones and reaching your financial goals. 401k Generation, building stronger futures one generation at a time. For more information, contact them, 866-998-5879, or visit their website, 401kgeneration.com. All right, Adrian, we saw the USF Bulls open their season last Thursday night against Boise State. It was, as Josh Pate called, a splattering. It was all South Florida, at least on the scoreboard. The statistics were a little shocking when I took a look at them, but the scoreboard did not lie in this case. It was not a mistake that Boise State was just not ready for what South Florida had to offer. So your initial thoughts on the Bulls?
My initial thought on the Bulls is a lot more respect for them than what I had at the beginning of the season, right? And we're going to get into that when we get with the predictions and all that good stuff. But, they played a good game, Neil. I think Boise State really was bothered by the heat and the humidity of that game. They actually had the better of USF there in the first quarter and a half. But then when USF hit them with that fake punt, and they just kind of rolled them after that. The momentum picked up, and, Boise State just looked a step slower. Like I said, the heat got to them. And USF's a fast team. When it's all said and done, they have a lot of speed on that team. And Boise State just could not match that, especially in the second half of that ball game. So that's something that Florida's going to have to match. Florida has speed as well, but it's got to be something that they got to be prepared for, and they can't let it, get them by surprise. USF has a lot of speed on both sides of that ball.
They do have a lot of speed. I think Florida's got more strength for sure. Yes. In the trenches. That's definitely something that favors Florida. And if you didn't watch the game, but you just looked at the score, you say, wow, okay, Boise State just got beaten up and beaten down for 4 quarters. That's not really what happened, though. I mean, Boise State actually outgained South Florida 378-372. They had almost twice as many first downs as South Florida had. South Florida hit the big play, though. You talked about with the fake punt, and South Florida was able to make the big plays consistently. Also, Boise State with 3 turnovers, South Florida having none. Florida also having no turnovers in its first game against Long Island. All right, so
correct.
I guess the question is there reason to be fearful of South Florida, or did we just see a really, really bad Boise State team just plummet back down to earth in the post Chris Peterson and Brian Harsin heyday?
No, USF, when it's all said and done, like I said, they're a Florida team. Okay, they have a lot of Florida players on that team. They filled their roster with some transfers that apparently are used to the system. One of it is Chaz Nimrod from Tennessee. Obviously, he was recruited probably by Golich. So
Golich,
slid right in, knows the system, and looks to be one of the favorite targets there of that quarterback. And one of the things that they got rid of him in Tennessee for, or weren't very sad that he left, was that he had a lot of drops. But he had no drops in this ball game. He made a couple big plays. So he's going to be somebody. Chaz Nimrod, I believe, was number 2. Somebody that Florida have to keep an eye on. So, yeah, you said it. If you go into this ball game thinking that it's going to be pretty much something similar to what LIU presented or something even maybe a little bit better than LIU, no. This team is a lot better than what you saw in LIU, and they could provide trouble for you if you're not ready for it, man.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, we're recording this very early Tuesday morning. I was hoping that the rankings would drop before we release this, but they're taking their sweet time because the UNC and TCU game, I guess, had to be factored into their rankings. So I guess the voters just waited for that to end. So we don't have the rankings yet, but we both assume that South Florida is going to be ranked when Florida plays them. If they're not, they're going to have a lot of votes, and they're going to be pissed about that. They're going to want a ranking beside their name. But regardless, you want to talk some names. Byrum Brown, the quarterback, 16 for 24 for 210 yards against Boise State in the win. Also ran 14 times for 43 yards. You mentioned Chaz Nimrod. The other guy Florida's got to watch out for, Keyshawn Singleton, who I think is number 11 on their team, definitely a double-digit number, 11 or 17. I think he was 11. 5 catches for 93 yards, including a touchdown. So Florida's going to have their hands full, or at least they better expect to have their hands full, and they cannot just come into this game thinking that they're going to have an easy time because, like you said, there are Florida kids on this roster that are just built differently than kids anywhere else in the country other than maybe like Texas. And you know, no disrespect to the rest of the country, but it's pretty clear that the kids that are bred in Florida and Texas and I guess maybe to a smaller degree like the Atlanta and New Orleans and Charlotte and maybe even like DC areas. DC did give us Joe Hayden and Jalen Tabor, so got to shout them out. But this is a different breed of athlete. And even the worst of them who wind up playing D1 football are still something that you have to be cognizant of and you have to have respect for. So like we said, Florida better be ready. And not to mention the fact that the last time South Florida came to Gainesville, when they were, by the way, a perfect 0-11 against the FBS that year, they almost beat Florida. And they probably should have beaten Florida that year. Their holder messed up a routine catch and put down for a hold, and their kicker still almost made it. Schrader still almost made it. Now they have a Grammatica kicking for them. So there are a lot of little things that, you know, yes, Florida should win this game, but there's a lot of little stuff that compiles that makes you pause and think if Florida's not fully ready to go, this game could potentially be trouble for them. But having said that, there is one thing that I think factors well into Florida's favor, and that is it's not the same offense that LIU ran. It's sort of similar in that they have a running quarterback and there are a few different kind of route concepts that I guess LIU tried to run that they really couldn't, but that they're supposed to be able to run that Florida was practicing for. Do you think that is a big help for Florida, or do you think that the new level of talent that Florida is now going to be facing relative to LIU is going to kind of shock them for a bit?
It gives you a little bit of a look of a dual threat quarterback, obviously, that LIU had, right? The USF kid is a lot more physical, though. That's his ball game. He's a physical runner, man. He's like a Cam Newton type of runner, that type of physicality. He trucked a couple of Boise State players, okay? But what's going to help Florida even more than that, though, like we talked about, is the fact that this is Alex Golish's team. He was offensive coordinator for Heupel. He came up under Josh Heupel. He's a disciple of that Heupel offense. Florida has played Tennessee pretty good the last 2 or 3 years. They're one of the teams in the SEC that have given Tennessee the biggest fits on defense, okay? And there's a lot of people in Tennessee who feel that Golich took with him some of their better play calls because they kind of think that the Tennessee lull in their offense kind of coincides from the time that Golich left. So now Golich is at USF. So Florida has that look. Roberts has gone up against that look many times. So that's what's going to help them the most. They're probably just put it in that Tennessee film right now, and that's what they're having to look at, and that's what they're preparing for with a more physical quarterback. Because I don't even think that Tennessee has had a physical quarterback like this. So that's going to be where they're going to have to match it. They're going to have to, rally tackle, and we'll talk about that later in the keys to the game. But getting that experience with the Tennessee look is what's going to help us the most there in this ball game.
Yeah, I mean, Tennessee is definitely the better comp in terms of the style of offense than LIU. I only mention LIU because if you're talking in like video game sort of fashion, it's almost like you're starting for playing the game for the first time. You start on rookie mode, and then you jump up to like not Heisman, but like all SEC or all conference mode. There's a very clear difference between LIU and South Florida, as I think everyone watching, listening to this knows. And there are enough similarities. And I think what LIU wants to do and that Florida prepared for, LIU just simply did not get the ability to roll it out because Florida's defense is just way too fast and too physical. But the level of competition, of course, being a lot tougher for Florida, now having prepared for a mobile quarterback. If nothing else about the offenses are similar, the type of dual threatness of a quarterback definitely is the constant there. So Florida's going to be ready, and they're going to be ready to tackle Byrum Brown. Does anything else about USF kind of give you pause? I know we talked about a couple of receivers.
Yeah.
Talked about Keyshawn Singleton. We talked about Chaz Nimrod. Is there anything else about USF offense or defense-wise that gives you reason to pause?
Yeah. Let me go to their defense right now real quick. First of all, they lost their best defensive player. They lost him in the portal. Bernard Gooden, defensive tackle, is now going to be starting for LSU. So he played against Clemson and played really good. So they lost their best defensive player there right in the middle of the defense. They went out and they got about 2 or 3 guys in the portal to plug up the middle. But the position that stood out to me the most, especially in that Boise State game, was linebacker. And the kid who stood out the most, which is going to be one of the key matchups to watch, is number 7, linebacker Jalen Schuler. He's a 6'3", 225-pound senior. His Boise stat line was 14 total tackles, 5 solos, 1 tackle for loss, and 1 pass defended. This kid was all over the field. He's going to be somebody that Jake Slaughter and that guy are going to meet head-to-head a couple of times in this ball game. And then I can't wait for when Jaden Bogg goes up against him, man. That's going to be a physical contact that's going to be made right there. So Jalen Schuler, he's number 7. Look for him. He's got to be somebody that the Gator offensive line has to key on, has to neutralize, because he's a game wrecker, man. He's a good player. Very fast, very physical.
I mean, I feel like I'm a broken record in saying this because I've said this pretty much throughout the past couple of years after it was very clear what Billy Napier was as an X's and O's guy. I happen to think Alex Golesh is 10 times the offensive mind that Billy Napier is. I think that Alex Golesh can coach rings around Billy Napier. The problem for him, of course, is that Billy Napier has 10 times the roster that South Florida has. So it becomes a game of do X's and O's beat Jimmy's and Joe's. We'll get to our keys. We'll get to our predictions in a moment. I happen to think they do, but we're talking about things that give us pause and things about South Florida that potentially scare us. That is something that scares me. Of course, Florida also does have Ron Roberts, as you talked about on the defensive side. It's not like Napier and Golesh specifically match wits against each other. It's Roberts against Golesh, more accurately Golesh against Ron Roberts, as opposed to the 2 OCs going at it. So I feel a little bit better with that in mind, but I think if the time comes where it's a close game and Florida needs a big stop, I would feel objectively better about South Florida's ability to scheme something up to get them the first down rather than the complete inverse situation where Florida needs a critical 3rd and 4 pickup or whatever, and Florida has to scheme something up to outwit the South Florida defense. So I don't think that means USF is going to win the game. We'll talk about that in a second. But again, the segment is about things that give us reason for pause, not reasons we think South Florida is going to win, but things that make us just pause for a moment. Okay, so that's that. Now let's talk about DJ Lagway, who did not have a great first game for the Florida Gators this season. I think that's to be expected when you have very limited reps. I think that Lagway's ability to make plays is going to be a little bit more unlocked in this game because we'll see more of the offense, and he'll be, again, that 1 week more comfortable and confident in himself. And I think that we're going to see him continue to progress as this game goes along, as we saw against Long Island. Adrian, what do you think about DJ Lagway in start number 2 of year number 2 in this system?
Well, I've never bought into the whole, the vanilla offense that teams show when they're playing a lesser opponent and all that stuff. You run your offense. Yeah, when you're playing a lesser opponent, you're not going to run trick plays and stuff like that, right? So that LSU next week knows what you're running, right? But when you're playing any game, you're running your offense. So no more excuse because that was a big excuse in this LIU game, right? Well, Billy was running vanilla, yada, yada, yada. Well, no excuse. Exactly. No, you're going to have to – anything you have in the playbook to win this ball game and get points on the scoreboard, you're going to have to do, okay? USF, I believe, is that good that you're going to have to just play a good, solid football game. So I expect DJ to have a lot less rust, has a whole week of practice. He's supposed to be 100% healthy. One thing about DJ in the LIU game that I did like was that he wasn't afraid to run out of the pocket. So, whatever the calf injury he had and all that, and the hamstring from last year and all that stuff, at least in his mind, heck, the first drop back pass, he had to go scramble and run out of the pocket. So maybe we'll even see some design runs for DJ Lagway. That's all part of the offense, man. So I want to see those types of plays. I want to see some crisper passes. And guess what? We're going to see DJ Lagway this entire ball game. How about that? We're going to see him this entire ball game. So we're going to see a lot of them. And he's going to get a lot of reps and a lot of work. So that's what I expect to see out of DJ.
Hopefully we don't, because it's 41-7 in the third quarter. But I think we both agree that that's a lot less likely to be the scenario than it was against LIU. And I tend to agree with you on pretty much everything you said. I don't think that Lagway is going to be throwing the ball 40 times, period. I just don't think that that's in the cards for a Billy Napier offense, period. But I do think that he may throw the ball 20 times, maybe 25 times, if for no other reason than to give him that many more reps. Even if the game is, let's say, 31-7 in the fourth quarter, I don't think we'll be seeing Napier dial up 4 verts plays, but I think we will see some of those. I hate it, but those 12 personnel looks, the rollouts where you dump it off to the tight end, the misdirection stuff where you have maybe a fake jet sweep or a fake counter to one side, and you have the tight end. Maybe it's Tony Livingston just rolling out for 5 yards, or Hayden Hansen rolling out for 5 yards, and the quick dump offs, just to give Lagway that much more muscle memory, more so than even just letting him rip it. I think you'll be seeing a lot of just the muscle memory development of DJ Lagway, just getting that much more familiar with hitting those swing passes, the screens, because those have to be accurate too. Like a screen pass can't be thrown behind the guy, right? You want to throw it so that he's catching it in stride, but not that he has to sprint, like break into a dead sprint to catch it and then sort of pull himself back up and then assess where his blockers are. You want to throw it perfectly so that he's catching it exactly at the speed he's normally running at, and then he can look up and assess where the blockers are at. So you want to see him develop some rapport with his receivers and running backs in that sense as well. So with those, and I said this in the LIU postgame show too, I was a little surprised to see his completion percentage be what it was, 15 for 18. And I said, well, to be fair, a lot of those were screen and just dump off quick passes, but he still completed them. And he didn't throw any of them wildly behind his receivers or way over their heads, except for the one that Vernell Brown kind of saved him on. But for the most part, he was accurate with those. So I think we will see him throw more of those types of short and intermediate routes, mixed in with maybe a couple deep balls, just because he has to, because hell, any team has to if they're going to win a game these days. All right. So the verdict. Let's get down to predicting what we think. We are going to hold off on the model piece of this because Dustin again still has to run that, because again, this is the one time of the season where the rankings are not going to come out until Tuesday afternoon, so we don't have that data. But nonetheless, we're going to make our picks here. Adrian, let's start with keys to the game. What's Florida have to do to avoid the big-time upset?
I got 3 keys to the game. First is going to be limit the big plays, okay? It's a staple of this offense, the Tennessee Josh Heupel offense. Just think about that. And it's basically the game that Byrum Brown plays. He's a big play type of player, okay? Either running or passing. That's how they pretty much handled Boise State. They hit him with some big runs. They hit him with some big passes. Number 2, solid tackling. You got to wrap up. That's key number 2, man. You can't let Byrum Brown run on you, run you over, break tackles. There's a rally to the ball type of game, and get him down on the ground, man. He's a physical runner, and when he gets going, it kind of gets that whole offense humming. And then number 3, run the ball. Okay, USF is kind of smallish. We talked about how I like their speed, but their defensive line is a little bit on the small side. So I expect our offensive line to be able to lean on them, be physical, impose their will, and run the ball, set up play action, keep the pass rush a little bit at bay also to help out Lagway hit some of those big plays that he wasn't able to hit in the LIU game. So run the ball, man. Get physical with these guys and impose your will on them.
Yeah, I mean, my keys are going to be, 2 of them are going to be exactly what we did against LIU, and that's do not turn the ball over, because that's a very quick and easy way to let an underdog kind of hang around for longer than they're supposed to. Number 2 is don't penalize yourselves out of good situations, or when you've got them stopped, continuing to give them life rafts into the game by, let's say George Gums and Tyreek Sapp come up with a big sack on 3rd and 6 in a 21-17 game in the 4th quarter, but then there's a face mask and you give them a free first down. They continue the drive and they get the score off of that. No critical penalties. Penalties are going to happen at some point. Let's limit those. Let's see 3 or fewer in this game, and let's make this a little bit more interesting than that. Let's see none in the 4th quarter. Let's see the Gators play their most disciplined ball down the stretch. The key number 3, I want to see the field goals get hit, because, again, that's an easy way to let an opponent hang around for longer than they're supposed to. They're only worth 3 points. Touchdowns are worth 7. I can understand that. But you talk about missing more than one of them, and that's a full score or 2 that is different than it should be on the scoreboard. And if you're up, let's say 17-7 in the 4th quarter and you've missed 3 field goals again, well, that's the difference between it being a real game, right? 17-7, 2-score game in the 4th quarter, and it being completely out of reach at 26-7. The game's over. I mean, you're not going to score 3 touchdowns on this Florida defense from what we saw against LIU. So let's see the field goals get hit. And then just to be different, to not just basically copy and paste our complaints and our compliments from the Long Island game, the major takeaways for both positive and negative, let's see what Billy Napier dials up. I want to see some more of his play calling so we can fairly assess it, because to your point earlier, there is the talking point that, well, he's just not showing his hand. Okay, cool. Let's see that. Let's see that happen, because I feel that if this game even starts out with any momentum for South Florida, or if they gain it in the 1st quarter at any point, it's going to be a 4-quarter fight. I think the way that this game is a blowout is if Florida jumps on their throats to start with and stays on it. You have to win the 1st quarter and then the 1st quarter and a half and keep your foot on the throat and not let them get any sense of momentum. Because in football, there are a lot of momentum swings. There's some big plays. There are some consequential plays. There are some momentum-changing plays. You have to control all of that, and you have to make sure that all works out in your favor. And part of the way you do that is by Napier not making any big mistake calls, which is another topic of conversation, and then letting his quarterback do what he does best and just making plays with his arm. So those are my keys. Let's talk about our predictions. First percent chance we think Florida has to win the game. Adrian, what do you got?
Well, on our preseason show, I had this at a 96. And if I remember correctly, a lot of the folks on our panel had it even higher than that.
Yeah, I did too.
Some had 98, 99 percentile. I've lowered my percentile. So my percentile now is at 80%. I say 80% chance Florida wins this ball game.
I'll go a little higher than that. I'll say 82, 83. I think it's a pretty sure thing that Florida wins, but it's not a guarantee, if that makes sense. Florida, like I said, they got to be ready to play. You got to come out guns blazing. You can't start slow, and you got to just consistently make plays. Fill your gaps, win your blocking assignments, disengage if you're on the defensive line, catch the ball, make your accurate throws. Just all the fundamental things have to be done consistently enough for a quarter or two that you pretty much just knock them out for the count. And I think if Florida wins the first quarter by 7 to 10 points, and then the second quarter they get another touchdown or even another field goal and they keep adding to the lead, I think that's the point where we can see Florida kind of break South Florida. But they have to get there first. So without knowing that, I'll say 82, 83. I will make this caveat that if Florida is up by 10 points or more in the late second quarter or later, that percent chance goes up into the 90s, like 96, 97%. I don't see South Florida coming back from a multi-score deficit in the second half. All right, your score prediction is what? I got to get my iPad so I can write mine down. What have you got? Adrian, let's
well, it started off as a 19-point spread. You actually posted on X on this, right? It started off as a 19-point spread, came down all the way to 17 and a half relatively quick. So I got it even below that, Neil. I have the score in this ball game, 31-17 Florida. That's what I have. I have a 14-point victory in the Swamp. There's going to be moments of consternation in that Swamp. There's going to be moments where we're like, what is going on here? And there's going to be some moments where we're going to have a little bit of anxiety, I think, believe it or not, Neil. I don't think this is going to be a blowout at all. I just don't see it. I hope I'm wrong. I hope it's a 45-10 ball game. I'll be ecstatic. But I just don't see that yet. I think, Neil, the best way that I could sum it up, I think there's still a little bit of rust that's going to have to be polished off this Cadillac before we feel that we're good to go going into Baton Rouge. Neil. What do you got?
Gotta polish the rust off the Cadillac. I like that. I'm just writing down my score prediction, and then we'll show it up for the memes.
Don't copy mine now, since I'm perfect.
Not going to copy it. I know. I purposely did not look at yours because I want to get my own one. Unfortunately, my iPad is being kind of annoying, but here we go. And here's my score pick.
31-14. So we're right there.
In the same ballpark.
31.
I don't think Florida covers that spread. Maybe the spread will come down, in which case I'll say sure, Florida will cover. I don't think Florida's going to cover the 18.5 or 19.5 point spread or whatever it started at. So I do think this is a Florida win. I think that there will be a moment or two in the first quarter that Florida kind of gets a little scared, or Florida fans get a little scared. I mean, the team, scared money don't make money, but I feel like this game will be pretty much in hand by mid-second quarter, halftime, and Florida will just kind of sit on the ball and try their best to run it out. I do have reason for pause when I say that. I do respect Alex Golish as an offensive mind. I do think that there is the potential for this game to get very scary, and I do think that there is a potential for Florida to lose. As I said, 82, 83%, I'll say 82.5%, just for the sake of picking a distinct number. But I think Florida just has too much talent. I think that's what it comes down to. I think USF has the better coach in terms of X's and O's. I think Florida has the better overall CEO and by far the better overall roster. And I think this is a situation where the Jimmies and Joes beat the X's and O's. So with that said, Adrian, any final thoughts on the Gators and the Bulls?
Real quick, just that our secondary is going to get tested in this ball game. Unlike in LIU, where they could have pretty much just, had a pina colada back there, in this game, they're going to be a part of it. And Jordan Castell, he's going to be tested in this ball game. Hopefully, he takes proper angles. And hey, how about this? Cormani McClain will get a pick.
That's good prediction. I like it. I was going to say, this is the game where Jason Marshall gets a pick, and then I realized, he's finally out of eligibility and went to Dolphins. I think this would be the kind of game though where I would say he would ball out. Like this would be his coming out party if he were still here. Obviously, he's not. But yeah, I don't know why this made me think of him, but this is, I think, the type of game where we do see our secondary make some plays.
Yeah,
I think that you're right, and I think that is because our front seven makes plays against better. Or against an outmatched opponent. So we'll have to see. Stay tuned for Dustin's model show. Coming up. Go ahead.
One more thing, Neil. USF's offensive line was a little bit leaky there against Boise State. Yes, and if they hadn't, gassed out because of the heat, Boise State was getting a lot of pressure on them. They have 2 FSU transfers on that O-line, and their starting left tackle was out of that ball game, and he's still out now. So they've had to shuffle that offensive line. Boise couldn't take advantage of it. There's a possibility that Florida could really dominate the line of scrimmage on defense. And if that's the case, it could make things a lot more comfortable. That's for sure.
This is why I'm mad at myself for not getting my iPad out earlier, because I actually had that in my notes to talk about, and we didn't talk about that. But yeah, that South Florida offensive line is not great. This is why we don't do shows really early in the morning most times. But yeah, that South Florida offensive line is not fantastic. Florida's defense should eat against that offensive line. There's no doubt about that. I mean, Florida, again, goes back to what we were talking about with the better overall roster. Florida just has more talent in those trenches. Tyreek Sapp, George Gums. You want to talk Caleb Banks coming back. You want to talk about the new guys like in Brendan Bett. They should be feasting on the South Florida offensive line. And the other side of that is true too. When Florida has the ball, their offensive line should be creating holes against the South Florida defensive line. Problem with that, of course, is what we talked about in the last show. We had an offensive lineman with a very, very low PFF grade. Again, PFF grades are not a perfect science, but they do give you a good ballpark estimation for what a guy's worth in terms of his production. And there was one guy, the right tackle, that did not have a very good grade. In fact, he had a terrible grade. So that is, I guess, cause for pause, but I still think that overall Florida's offensive line should win the trench battle against the South Florida defensive line. So with that said, I think we are out of topics now, finally. This will be the last show we do at this ungodly hour in the morning. But until next time, y'all, Neil Shulman signing off with Adrian Perez. We will do a model show later in the week and unveil that prediction. Model was only 1 point off the last time, although I guess Adrian was 0 points off, so he wins. That was pretty impressive. He just nailed that in your first ever pick within all kinds of weather. But stay tuned for that, y'all. Dustin's going to break things down by the numbers. And until then, y'all, still stay safe, stay healthy. We'll see you in the swamp on Saturday. Adrian and I will be back together as well in Section 1. Go Gators. Let's make it a perfect 4-0 against the Bulls of South Florida.
Okay.